The party tirelessly walks through the bone-chilling caves laden with rime and frost. As the group of foolhardy adventurers enters the next cavern, they smell the delightful scent of a cauldron of bubbling soup, but with something a bit more sinister. Hello, I'm Dr. Whittlesticks, and we're heading back to Icewind Dale to explore 3 more quests from the towns of Caer-Konig, Dougan's Hole, and Easthaven. Our first quest is Caer-Konig. The adventure is simple, but a good one. This adventure is almost completely necessary to set up the Duergar in Chapter 3. Once the players find a Duergar lair under Calvin's Cairn, they'll be able to spot the bunker. Now in the book, there's a trail that allows the party to go around the bunker, but there's no real way for them to notice it. So in our guide, a DC 16 perception check can reveal the way to avoid this bunker. Our first location of change is O2. First, why did the Duergar have an ogre zombie? There aren't any necromancers, so instead we're going to change it out with a cave bear that is chained to the wooden stake. This cave bear, much like the former ogre zombie, also does belong to Nildar. The only real other change is in the area 06. Nildar, who is the son of Zordarak, is only as strong as a typical soldier? I don't think that's right. So we're going to turn Nildar into a Duergar soul blade, whose stat block can be found in Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes. On to our next town in quest, as now we are exploring Dougan's Hole. The quest in the town of Dougan's Hole is called Hold Up, and has lots of problems, like the fact that wolves lock children in cages. I've done the research. That's impossible. Anyway, we're keeping the play fight between the 2 winter wolves the same, although we're going to cut that wolf pack encounter, because what's the point of it? I mean, they literally have a winter wolf on their side. The thing can just ice breath and kill the whole pack in a turn. It's just useless combat. Our biggest change in the backstory is that of Norsu and Garagai. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, but I don't really care. Garagai is a frost giant who was banished from his clan after trying to start a mutiny. He was alone in a poorly built ice lodge. His only friend and companion was his mount, Mammoth Norsu. Well, after a while, Garagai started to build out the cauldron caves. More on that later. And eventually, he discovered the lake hag, Maud Chiselbone. He made a deal with Maud and asked her to give his mammoth intelligence. Unknown to the frost giant is that the hag siphoned his intelligence and put it into his companion. So our Norsu got smarter. His frost giant rider became dumber and dumber. He went to the cauldron caves to beg Maud to save his life, but unfortunately for him, it was too late. With Norsu's intelligence and having no one to blame, he decided that it was human civilization that killed him. This has left the mammoth utterly sad, depressed, and angry. Our first change is Area L3. This room now has a frost druid. If she survived or has not been encountered yet, you can make it Ravison from the Lonely Wood quest. If not, it's just a random frost druid. This frost druid met Norsu in his emotional state and decided to try and convince him that humans were at fault. The frost druid has captured the 2 children and is now going to force them to explain for their crimes. Depending on how the encounter goes and how evil you are as a DM, you could have this enrage Norsu, in which case he will go off to destroy Dougan's Hole, which will likely result in, let's just be honest, the destruction of Dougan's Hole. They do not have a militia strong enough to beat up a raging mammoth. L5. When the players enter here, change Norris from saying that they're to blame to asking them to explain for their crimes. If the players have done the Cauldron's Cave quest and have the soul of Garagai with them, then he can reunite it with Norsu. More on that at the end of the video. Lastly is L6. We're going to add a framed map to this dining hall. On it, there's various locations, including the Cauldron Caves, which in Giant is referred to as the Hot Springs, Jarlmoot, as well as Hoarfrost, a frost giant stronghold that we're adding later in the guide. There's also 3 kobolds in this room. One of these kobolds belonged to one Valin Harpel, which I'm sure you know as the one lady who pops out of nowhere when the dragon comes at Sunblight. Seriously, whoever wrote that should be fired or given a lesson in writing, whatever's easier. Anyway, if the players help the kobolds escape, then that one kobold will later recognize them whenever they meet Valin Harpel. Also, the kobold might ask them to return them to their master if they haven't met Valin yet, in which case she is currently staying in the town of Brynshander. Lastly is the town of Easthaven and the Cauldron Caves. So as it goes, Captain Whatever Their Face tells the party about the missing fishing crew, and so the party hops on a boat and goes out to rescue them, blah blah blah. Let's get to the good stuff. So, in the module, the caves are described as having a horrible howl that could drive someone insane, round the bend, batty, loopy, and other synonyms. This being so, a player who spends 1 hour in the cave must make a DC 14 Wisdom saving throw or suffer from a bout of short-term madness. If they decide to take a long rest in the cave, then it's a DC 16 saving throw, which will result in short-term madness, as well as them only recovering half of their hit points. Okay, next up is U2. Instead of a dire wolf, there's going to be 3 Shahoogans here. Why? Because is this where a dire wolf lives? Like, I get that there's basically nothing but ice, so it's kind of like a platform, but I don't think the wolf is going to go walk a couple hours to go find food just to arrive at a town. There's just a whole bunch of weird stuff about this dire wolf living here. Anyway, probably my second favorite change here is Area U6. This is a burnt campsite, and it actually belongs to the fishermen that came to this town. In fact, in here is a female dwarf named Mistriva, who has gone completely insane due to the howling. She has killed and ate one of her companions and has utterly burnt this campsite. She has a ripped up journal, a few pieces of which still remain. She has a banded stat block and will attack a player if she thinks that she can win. A calm emotion, lesser restoration, or other magic of that level or higher can revert her back to her normal state. U7. So this goes for almost all the water in the cave, but this place used to be a hot spring. So instead of it being completely frozen, it's just a thin layer on top. Instead of there being a water weir trapped under it, there is instead 5 steam methods that were created by this magical hot spring that are trapped under the layer of ice. Area U8. This water here, unlike the rest of the caves and the module, is almost completely unfrozen, except for 5 chunks of ice that are floating in the hot spring. Now, in this hot spring's water is the corpses of 4 frost giants. If the players search the corpses, they can find one of the frost giants that has a helm of telepathy. When the player wears it, they get visions of giants building several grand thrones, as well as the location to Jarlmute. Now on to U9. Instead of a frost giant skeleton to TPK your party, there's a corpse of a frozen frost giant stuck in ice. Disturbing the body releases the soul of the frost giant, which appears before the players. The frost giant is named Duergar, which I'm sure you can remember from earlier in the video in the Dougan's Hole quest, and is a non-combatant. Duergar will make conversation with the party, but no matter what, he'll ask for them to go and return his skull to Norisu, his mount, who he's scared is worried sick. If the party does return Duergar's soul, and by extension his head, to Norisu, not only will the frost giant be put to rest, Norisu will no longer be angry at humanity. The party will also gain a charm of heroism. Area U10. This area is home to Maud Chiselbone. She has a Will-O-Wisp familiar and 3 Vineblight servants. She knows about the sailors who entered her cave and is currently watching Mistriva go insane. As she watches Mistriva go insane, she is also spicing up her cauldron of plenty with a bit of human flesh. I mean, I prefer cumin, but to each their own. When the players enter, Maud will happily offer them a bowl of soup, If the players take it, explain how they can see chunks of flesh and maybe even an eye staring back at them. At the very back of this cave is a cage that holds another one of the fishermen named Nolan Fitch. Maud has been fattening up by forcing him to eat his fallen crewmates. Maud commonly spends her time taunting him, mocking about how the fact that he's soon to be soup himself. Well, that's it for these couple of quests. Tell me how they go in the comments below. Will your players be able to reunite the Frostshire and their mammoth, or save these lost fishermen? Also, a little treat for anyone who's watched this far. In the description is a Google Doc. There's a written version of the Cauldron Caves guide. Anyway, please like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.